Holy orders. Most stories you hear have a start and an end, so you can put a hand on either side of them and walk away with them when you're done. But this story doesn't have a start nor an end. It's hard to carry. This is a story that's endless. And once you've heard it, you're all wrapped up in it, and it's bound to carry you. The Old Man and the Old Moon by Pigpen Theatre Company. If I've told this story once, I've told it 20 times. More than 20 times. Whenever someone asks me how I ended up here, I start with this story. My story starts in a 108-seat thrust theater. It is final dress of the first performance of the season. I'm the associate box office manager, and I have to attend. Now, this is my 5th year with the company. I know the routine. I sit in the worst seat in the house, outside aisle, house right, back row, the one everybody complains about. Settle into my seat and prepare to watch the play so I can discuss it with patrons and address any concerns. It's too hot. It's too cold. It's too loud. It's too quiet. It's too bright. It's too dark. The show begins with a song. Song from the Snow. And I have spent the past half dozen years trying to explain what happened after that song. Transcendence, the numinous, God, all of the above, and something else. I lived in that play. I do remember where I was sitting and my view from the stage. I do remember what I was wearing. I do remember it was actually a little bit chilly in the theater that night, but otherwise, my being was in that story. This story of love and risk and complacency, of regret and redemption, and so much more. Finally, someone was speaking the native tongue of my soul. The play was The Old Man and the Old Moon by Pigpen Theatre Company, and my soul was not content with just once. I saw that production 16 more times. When it closed, I was devastated. I thought my soul had to live in a deafening silence the rest of my life. God is better than that, though. Other productions happened in New York, Boston, San Diego, Pittsburgh, to name a few. Pigpen Theatre Company is also a band and have done several national concert tours. My soul language was being spoken all over the country. So I bought plane tickets and train tickets and rented cars, and I followed. I spent my 30th birthday at a concert in Seattle. The following Thanksgiving, I was in Boston. Then New Orleans and Atlanta. I was at a concert in New York 2 weeks before my grandmother died. Then they made my life easy and came back to Chicago. I listened to Pigpen speak and sing my soul language for several years. Being able to listen to your soul language is a gift, but it changes you. There was a Meredith before, and there is a Meredith after. I learned things that I could only learn in my language. Story matters. Not only the stories, but how you tell them, when you tell them, who you tell them to. Everything you want is on the other side of fear. I promised myself I would never again walk away from something that matters to me because of fear. My call. A call I had heard some 10 years previous, but then misinterpreted and then ignored. But I could not watch others rise to the challenge of answering their vocation and remain complacent myself. If Pigpen could speak my soul language in story and song, then I needed to find my way to speak it to others. The last time I saw Pigpen perform was in Pittsburgh. I saw the Old Man and the Old Moon 3 days in a row, and then finished off the weekend with a concert. After so many years of being super fan, their nickname for me, I'd gotten to know them and they'd gotten to know me. I told them I'd been accepted to United and that I probably wouldn't be around for a while. And that was true. I've missed a few concerts, a production of The Old Man and the Old Moon in LA, and a new play premiering in San Diego. I miss hearing my soul language, but I'm learning how to speak it. Amen. Baptism. God is always in the water for me. In the rain, in the waterfalls, in the rivers, in the lakes. I would walk the shores of Lake Michigan every night it was even remotely warm enough to do so. Some nights the water was so clear and the moon so bright, you could tell the color of the stones beneath the waves. Other nights, the water was dark and tumultuous with waves that crashed on the pier and the beach with great white-capped splashes. Yet other nights, the lake was like glass, and you couldn't tell where the water ended and the sky began. There was one night when nothing special was going on. The lake was just the lake, her typical everyday self. Yet I was so filled with elation and gratitude for being that I ran to the very edge of the water and fell to my knees to give thanks. In the Harry Potter universe, there is a potion, Amarentitia. It is a powerful love potion, and it smells different to everyone, smelling like what most attracts us. It would definitely smell like a summer rainstorm to me. I love all the smells of a summer rain. The damp potential before it rains, the soaking smell of the water as it comes down, and finally the sense it lifts from the grass and the trees and the asphalt when it's over. I like standing in the rain and letting myself get soaked to the skin. And if I'm warm and dry inside when it starts raining, well, I will grab my keys. I will not grab my raincoat. And I will go get drenched. Why? I forget my God, and then it rains. And I'm 14 again, standing at the base of the Bridal Falls on the Niagara River, my poncho disregarded, and I am realizing that the God that created that massive tower of water created me. That this mighty creator loves insignificant me. And I know a feeling that does not have words, a love, a joy, a something. I am never again the same. I forget my God, and then it rains. I was not baptized as an infant. The choice to be baptized was left up to me, and I was baptized at 13 at my own request. The experience was lackluster. But the ritual symbol of commitment for the Christian faith had been checked off the to-do list. 4 months later, my 8th grade class took an end-of-the-year trip to Niagara Falls. We were on the Cave of the Winds tour. They don't do this anymore, I don't think. This tour takes you below and behind the Bridal Veil Falls on the American side. My class was given ponchos because the mist from the falls is like getting caught in a light rain. We were told, in no uncertain terms, not to take the ponchos off. I, in particular, was expected to be on my very best behavior. I was one of 2 valedictorians in the 8th grade class, and my mother was one of the chaperones. I am a Slytherin, though, which means rules are only rules up to a certain point. On a wooden platform, about halfway down, we stopped to observe the falls from below. As I looked up at that water, pouring down at tens of thousands of gallons per second, the sun creating little rainbows in the mist, I realized that God created this awesome, powerful, incredible thing. And God also created me. I felt so loved, so special, that God should choose to create us both. Standing below the Bridal Veil Falls, feeling the enormous regard of a deeply loving God, I pulled off my poncho and let the mist soak me. That was my actual baptism. I was bathed in mist and love and total defiance of the rules, because something much, much, much more important was happening. There I was, poncholess, soaking wet, and utterly joyous. Amen. Eucharist. 3 cups of flour. Butter, salt, milk, egg, sugar, and 1 tablespoon of cardamom. Add all this to 1 package of yeast dissolved in warm water. Knead until elastic or smooth. You know that you've kneaded it enough when you can take a piece and carefully stretch it until you can see the light through a window pane of dough. Then wait. This is how you make Finnish nisua. I'm the only one in my family who makes it. The last person to make the nisua was my great-great step-grandmother. And for decades, the nisua was lost. My mumma, which is a Finnish term for grandmother, kept the memory of nisua alive by buying boxes of Entenmann streusel and calling it nisua. But it was a memory, and we had lost our ancestral bread until 2012. I wanted to do something special for Mumma for Christmas. So Google and I went looking for nisua. Nisua has several aliases, among them nisu and pula. But we found it, and I learned to make it, and I brought it to Christmas Eve dinner. I still remember Mumma's expression when we had it for dessert. I did it. I made Finnish nisua. I had restored our ancestral bread with 1 small change. I finished the bread with a sugar glaze. My great-great-grandmother did an egg wash. Not even a year later, my grandmother was rushed to the hospital with crippling back pain. Doctors ran a battery of tests, and a few days later, my mother called me with their diagnosis. Stage 4, small cell lung cancer. We knew then it was a death sentence. We had just learned the thing that would take my grandmother's life. Chemo was only going to buy us time. But like good stoic Finns, we kept telling each other we could overcome this. We tapped into our ancestral sisu, the Finnish spirit of tenacity and endurance and inner strength. Sisu is being able to carry on when there's a polar bear at the front door. We can handle cancer. Mumma began chemotherapy right after Christmas, and it did halt the spread of the cancer for a while. It bought us enough time to celebrate my grandparents' 60th wedding anniversary and Mumma's 80th birthday. And I made nisua all the time, every holiday. About a month after her birthday, my phone rings. Mom, the results of the latest tests. The chemo has stopped working. The cancer has metastasized to her brain. 3 months to a year. Maybe we would have one more Christmas. Maybe. We did not. Muma died the day after Thanksgiving 2015. As Christmas approached, with our grief still raw and fresh, between sobbing pain and stoic sisu, my mom asked if I would make the nisua. Now, my mother has not eaten sugar or flour in 30 years. She has never, and will never, have a bite of nisua. But she wanted it on the table. It belonged there now. I still make nisua every Christmas. We have our ancestral bread, and we will not lose it again. And as often as we eat of it, we do so in remembrance of Muma. Amen. Confession. When I was 6 years old, I looked my mother straight in the eye and with total and complete conviction said, "When I grow up, I'm going to be a ship's captain." This has always been my way when it comes to careers. Pick a path, make a plan, don't deviate. This is what you're doing, this is who you are. Later in my childhood, I got over the ship's captain thing, I decided I was going to be an Egyptologist, and I stuck with this straight through high school. I made sure every college I applied to had a strong anthropology program, and then when I got to college, I didn't take a single anthropology course. I majored in theater, a major I swore I would never, ever take, because my parents are actors, and I know how much money they don't make. But I became a stage manager. I stage managed both college productions and independent productions. I was a stage manager. Then my junior year of college, I got a call to ministry. And after an initial reaction of, "Oh my God, you have got to be kidding me," I once again took a sharp turn at full speed and started heading down the ministry path full tilt. I applied to seminaries. I moved to Chicago, and I started the ordination process in the United Church of Christ. I decided I wasn't really interested in being the solo pastor of a church, but I would make a great associate pastor with a slightly larger congregation with a focus on youth ministry, and that's who I was. Then I bombed out spectacularly. Suddenly, I didn't have a path. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know who I was. A spiritual mentor and friend of mine tried to help me through this process. She had a kind of mantra, and eventually I think she got so sick of saying it to me that she just recorded it as the outgoing message on her voicemail. "Meredith, you are a beloved child of God. Your identity is not determined by what you do for a living." While I was struggling with all of this, I was also incredibly broke. I needed a job, so I became a box office associate, where I learned the valuable life skill of talking to people who don't quite understand the difference between theater tickets and matters of life and death. And then, in this job that was part of no plan, I got promoted. It wasn't a planned promotion where I moved up in the company or had opportunities for advancement. I got the promotion because 3 out of our 5-person department quit. And my qualifications were that I was competent and still there. 2 years later, I got promoted again. And again, completely unplanned. We'd just gotten a shiny new software and that was going to dictate all of our day-to-day operations. And then the person who chose the software, implemented the software, and was going to be responsible for the software, left the industry entirely. I wasn't promoted because that was the plan. I was promoted because I was the least confused. Next thing I know, it's 10 years later and I have a career in arts administration. I'm really good at it. Colleagues would stop and tell me that I'm never allowed to leave because they don't know what they'll do without me. I got my entire life because of failed plans, or no plan at all. I had not only my career, but my friends, my travels, my apartment, my cat, and even my little bit of fame as Pigpen Theater Company's biggest fan. And my greatest successes had all come from these unplanned twists of fate. I am trying to plan things again. I mostly planned to move to the Twin Cities and come to United. There have been some twists and unexpected turns and a spiritual direction certificate. Yet things have largely been going to plan. But even if things go wildly off the rails, if every plan falls through, even if I fail spectacularly, what's the worst that could happen? I end up with another awesome, unexpected, unplanned life. Amen. Confirmation. I want to belong to a church where you can fuck up, where you can be flawed and imperfect, individually and collectively, like God made us. You know, human. My mom and I had started going to church. Mom was raised agnostic and still very much on the fence about this whole church thing. But I was attending a conservative Lutheran grade school and coming home with some weird questions and ideas, so to a nice progressive UCC church we went. At the beginning of the sermon, the pastor tells this story. A pastor was leading Sunday worship when he noticed that the sound had cut out on his microphone, and the congregation could no longer hear him. So he leaned forward in the pulpit and tried to shout down to the pews, "There's something wrong with the microphone." To which the congregation responded, "And also with you." It's a terrible joke, right? But I'm 11 years old and I've never heard anybody tell a joke in church, and I am cracking up. I'm not even laughing out loud. I'm just shaking. And the pew is shaking with me. My mom tries to say, "Stop, you're shaking the pew," but she can't actually get the words out because she's laughing too hard. This is the church I was baptized and confirmed in. Many years later, I started attending a church in Chicago called Gilead. Hashtag not that Gilead. Gilead is unique. For starters, it meets in a bar. Most of the hymns are pop songs. It tells true stories that save lives, and it grows its own garlic. And nobody is perfect. I once got a voicemail from one of the pastors saying, "Oh my God, Meredith, I'm so sorry. That was so embarrassing. Please, I was driving and missed a turn. Please totally disregard that email." Of course, now I have to go check my email. The email says, "Thanks so much for leading prayers of the people. We'll go over the response. Fuck me again, and so much." I feel bad for telling on her, but she worked that story into a sermon later that year. Worship is no more flawless. They're not in a church, so there are no aisles. Communion is good-natured chaos. We're always adjusting the microphone between the 5'5" pastor and the 6'2" pastor, not to mention all the lay speakers. We don't have hymnals, and the congregation only knows the chorus, which is not unusual, but they're pop songs, because that's how Gilead rolls. So you get, "It's the end of the world as we know it." All of it makes me feel better about getting the body of Christ stuck in my teeth. One Sunday, when my parents were visiting, We get to the point in the service where we bless the bread and wine. They bless the bread, and one of the pastors takes a chalice in each hand and does this. We have forgotten the communion wine. The pastors are profusely apologetic for forgetting the wine and saying, well, we'll just have to make do. As I mentioned, Gilead meets in a bar, and the congregation can already see the bartender reaching for a bottle of red. But that thought has not occurred to the pastors yet until the congregation, in complete unison, says, we're in a bar. Problem solved. And all the imperfect can make for such perfection, though. Gilead believes Easter should be a celebration, a party. So one year we got a piñata. We let the kids take first crack at getting things open, and when they did not succeed, the adults took over. The adults were less interested in getting the candy than in working through some shit, and eventually we bent the stick in half that we were using. We had to steal a broom from the custodial closet to continue. Meanwhile, the pastor, the same pastor that sent me the email, and I are leaning against each other, holding each other up, laughing so hard we can no longer stand on our own. Eventually, we both end up sitting sprawled on the ground in our Easter dresses, trying to regain our equilibrium. It was beautiful chaos. That's my kind of church. Amen. Final anointing. The love of my life is black, furry, and meows. He's 18 pounds, loves catgrass, and thinks he's totally capable of hunting a Canada goose if I would just let him outside. He's FIV positive, and he will be my cat, and I will be his person, until death do us part. I grew up with cats. There was Moo, who was 17 pounds and mewed like a kitten. He was so named because between his size and his fur color, he looked like a Holstein cow. There was Wiley, who we found abandoned at the post office. He would steal anything he could carry in his mouth. Every Thanksgiving, we would find my mother's decorative gourds on a pile in the living room rug. Princess Thunder Kitty, whose name was clearly a group effort. She liked exactly two beings in her entire life, my mom and our Basset Hound. The Basset Hound did not reciprocate. Contessa Freckles von Stupid Cat, another group effort name. She was a beautiful color and so dumb she couldn't find her way out of a paper bag. I know. We watched her try and fail. Then Corky, who after my dad said, no more cats. If someone brought home another cat, the cat could stay, but the person had to leave. Then Dad decided he wanted a black cat, and Corky became his therapy cat, sitting with his clients and purring them through their trauma. All of these animals have since passed away. They were my first encounters with loss and grief. They were the lessons that prepared me for the far more devastating losses that would come as I got older. Finally, there was Bubba and Boots. Bubba and Boots were my cats. Bubba was a black kitten born just 5 months after I was, to a stray cat my dad had brought home after my mom's cat had run away. He was born with an enlarged head that eventually shrank to normal size, but not before he was christened Bubblehead, which eventually became Bubba Head, and then just Bubba. Boots was given to me by my dad when I was 3. He was a small, gray tabby kitten that my dad could practically hold in one hand, but I was a little too small to hold him comfortably. He spent much of his kittenhood hanging by his front armpits while I tried to pick him up. And with all of the originality of a 3-year-old, I named him Mr. Boots because he had white boots on all 4 paws. When my parents divorced, Bubba stayed with Mom, which is why Dad got me Boots, so I would have a cat at both houses. Those cats were with me through all the changes of my early life, while I was being raised by 2 single parents. They were with me when my parents met and married their current spouses. They were the furry anchors of my childhood. Both of them have their own legacy and collection of cat stories. Bubba had the weirdest meow. Meow, 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 meow. Boots once tried to eat the Christmas lights. It was a shocking experience, and he never tried again. Boots died when I was 19, the day before I came home from college for Christmas break. I just missed him. I felt terrible about that for years, but what could I have done? Bubba got sick while I was away at summer camp when I was 15. I made it home for him. He was too sick to go up and down the stairs, so my mom put him in the basement where his food and litter box lived. I got home and went down to visit him. He was asleep on top of my mom's clean laundry. Even dying, he was still a cat. I petted him and he purred, and I said goodbye to him. I think he said goodbye to me too. More than a decade later, I was in the room when my grandmother breathed her last. I credit the cats with teaching me how to say goodbye. Amen. Matrimony. I sing the body electric. The armies of those I love engirth me, and I engirth them. They will not let me off till I go with them, respond to them, and discorrupt them, and charge them full with the charge of the soul. Was it doubted that those who corrupt their own bodies conceal themselves? And if those who defile the living are as bad as they who defile the dead? And if the body does not fully as much as the soul? And if the body were not the soul, what is the soul? Walt Whitman. It's the summer after my first year in seminary. I'm 22. I'm working at an arts camp for teenagers in the high desert of Southern California. The next day is my one day off a week. In the morning, several of my fellow camp counselors and I are heading down to Hemet, a town consisting of 2 bars, a super Walmart, and a tattoo parlor. I am agonizing over fonts. I've fallen in love with this word, and I'm going to get it inscribed on my body. Credo. Latin. Translates to I believe in English. The early church creeds begin with this word. Credo in Deum Patrem omnipotentem creatorum coeli et terra. I believe in God the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth. In English, saying I believe usually means I accept these statements as true. But credo is more like I know these truths so deeply, I give my heart to them. Credo does not begin a statement of certainty. It begins a statement of love. The language of faith is the language of love. Believe is also a love word, coming from the Old English belove. A creed is not a legal contract. It is a love poem and a vow. Once it was part of my flesh, I understood that credo begins a profound statement of love, of commitment, of deeply held truths that are not easily caught in words or images. They must be lived. They must be embodied. A creed is actions carried in my muscles and bones. A vow lived out in the flesh. An incarnate love. So my entire body speaks of the truths I know so deeply. I give my heart to them. Amen. Thank you all very much.